Oh, sweet. The sweet club deck. Thank you, Pierre. And I definitely need to start loading it up with a ton of audio files now. I can't wait to do that. So
Quick
let's jump.
question, Tyler. Do you think that Pierre will also have a club deck version in a more mobile, like for example an iPad?
Well, maybe let's ask Pierre because I don't know that my answer's of any value.
He's
Uh,
here, Florian.
yeah.
He's here.
Yeah, I'm just saying because
Uh,
on the let's say the native one is for the iPhone. It
Yeah.
looks funny if you use an iPad
But
because it's just an iPhone, and could be something
I
worth.
don't think you could do Club Deck on an iPhone. That would be really difficult.
But on an iPad, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it still would be tricky. It's hard. It's even a bit tricky on a small laptop. I'm using like a 35-inch monitor to really take full advantage of
okay,
it.
wait, we're gonna do a side room with Pierre. This is gonna be good. Everyone has so many
All right.
questions for Pierre.
Yeah. Yeah. Get going on the tech news. More
Okay.
interesting tech news.
Okay. So here we go. And I've not looked through the tweets for the past 14 hours. Which means we have about 500 tweets to get through. So my apologies right from the start. We will get through all of them, and you'll have to let me know which were the absolute best ones that you sent in. But I do have the big list of the biggest stories in tech at the moment, and let's start with those. And
But
what
but
we've got.
Tyler,
Hey, Mahogany.
under the new format that Aaron suggested yesterday,
Yes.
we're gonna
Yeah,
yes.
we will do that for sure. So, but let's do this first. So let me just get the really big headlines out of the way. The big boring headlines that everyone else is sharing. You know, the unfiltered, unwashed masses of not so truly brilliant geeks are sharing. These are the headlines they're sharing. Here's the headlines that your coworkers are sharing. Robinhood files for long-awaited IPO, says it will set aside 35% of the shares for retail investors. Popular trading app Robinhood on Thursday filed for its IPO and disclosed that it will set aside 35% of the shares for retail investors who rarely get to buy at the company's IPO price. And they are in a very unique position because Robinhood itself is an app to buy stocks, which I use myself. And I have to say, I absolutely love it. And I used other tools for many years previously, like interactive brokers and whatnot, which in comparison feel like worse than Windows 95. I mean, just absolutely antiquated crap. So, Robinhood, by comparison, feels like you're playing TikTok or something, and it's delightful to use, actually. And best of all, rather than paying $8 per every time you buy anything, it's absolutely free. Assumedly, they could be playing some games, and they are playing some games. They clear. I wonder how they're monetizing this app. Anyone? It's a trick question. It's the data. So, anyhow, they're because they are an app where people buy stocks. They had the bright idea of like, hey, we got a whole bunch of people who buy stocks using this app. How about they buy our IPO? And we give them a way to buy our IPO and participate in our IPO. And that's where it says they're setting aside 35% of their shares for retail investors. I wonder what yes?
Tyler, sorry, it's interesting because this comes out right after, they agreed to pay $70 million in a investigation
Right.
that just got settled.
Yes. Yesterday they were hit with a fine for $70 million, which I'm wondering if they could have. What an interesting coincidence, if it is at all, or was that intentional to try and cast a shadow over their IPO? But the that was the headline about Robinhood yesterday, and I said yesterday that this is happening right as they're supposed to be IPOing, and sure enough, 24 hours later, here we are. But the fun doesn't stop there because Robinhood, in doing this thing of doing their own IPO and carving out a bit of their own IPO, 35% of the shares for people to purchase directly through the app, which is unusual for retail investors to be able to get in at the IPO at the IPO price. And I think Nicholas on stage might know more about this than anybody on stage who could help correct us. But they're now added a whole new feature to do this with other upcoming IPOs, notably, what's the language learning app that I'm so fond of?
Duolingo.
Duolingo is just listed within Robinhood so that people can sign up to participate as part of their IPO and buy the stocks at the actual IPO price, not 10 minutes after they go public on the market. Because usually what happens is the company IPOs at $40, and then by the time the bell rings in the morning, it's already up to 60, 70, 80 bucks. Well, that would be tremendous, but no, it's more like 45 or 50 or 55. And this way you actually get in at the actual IPO price. And that's kind of a cool new thing.
Hey, Tyler, I
So,
was in that business,
yeah.
and so I just wanted to make
Oh
a
yeah,
quick
Ken,
comment.
that's right. Sorry, this is your ballpark. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious at how many IPOs they'll be able to do beyond their own, because they'd have to be part of the underwriting syndicate. That's one thing, and I think companies that are issuing stock probably are going to sit there and say, "Do we want Robinhood investors that are likely to flip the stock very quickly?" The reality is, when you're an institutional buyer and you get allocations, it's not like you promise not to flip it. And I'm not just saying that hedge funds don't flip it, but you have to kind of be careful. If you get a reputation that you flip the stuff the minute it goes up, 5 minutes later, you stop getting allocations. That's even true for institutional investors. So institutional investors generally have more experience and a little bit more well behaved in not overturning that stuff. And I'm curious. I'd be suspect about how many allocations they're going to get from other companies.
I appreciate
I think
the insight. Yeah, Nicholas.
as a former syndicate manager, I think there's two things. There's two things to note about running an IPO. One is that the business of the equity capital markets business, the business that creates the IPOs, is that they're in a long-term relationship with a number of the funds. And every fund, you've got pension funds, you've got life insurance funds, you've got all different funds that have different holding time horizons. And when you're a syndicate manager, you want to make sure that there are long-term holders, medium-term holders, and then short-term holders. And a lot of the time, the short-term holders are the guys that are bailing you out on deals that are not going to go so well. That there's a relationship that happens over the years. I mean, I stopped being a syndicate manager a long time ago, but I don't suspect it's any different. Is that some people help you out on a tight deal and they get allocations on a good deal, and it sort of evens itself out. In respect of retail, of course, retail is much harder to sell to, but I do think that Robinhood has got a very good opportunity to distribute its stock to its own shareholders, but that would likely lead to less price performance in the IPO, which usually is less strong if there's a large retail element, because yes, they will take a gain more quickly, and also because they don't have a long-term relationship with the allocator. As Ken said, indeed, for further issuance into retail, you would need to be part of the syndicate, the underwriting syndicate, if you were to be distributing in future. But there's no reason why Robinhood couldn't do that. I think the real interesting thing to note about Robinhood is from their S1 is that Citadel made up 34% of Robinhood's revenue, which you'll remember the whole hoo-ha over the meme stocks. And so, that's up from 29%. So this is still very much the traditional hedge fund, private equity world that is participating and is the business of Robinhood for the most part. So don't be fooled into thinking that they are anything but a new form of distribution for the traditional players. And I think you can look at the December 31st, 2020 revenue derived from PFOF, which is the flow business to Citadel and others, SoFi does the same with another group, and the transaction rebates together represented 75% of their total revenues, and for the 3 months ended March the 31st, 2021, represented 81% of their total revenues. So this is, don't be fooled, they're no friend of the common man.
So there's another article that Radeja just sent in, actually 2 new articles about Robinhood. The first is Robinhood asks judge to toss payment order flow lawsuit. Online trading platform says lawsuit too vague to meet bar for securities fraud, argues trade execution too fact specific for class treatment. Robinhood Markets asked a federal judge in Oakland to end a lawsuit alleging the online trading platform committed securities fraud by getting paid to send customer orders to the broker-dealers. The motions filed on Tuesday urged U.S. District Court Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers to dismiss or deny class action suits status to the lawsuit, which alleges the company failed to alert customers that broker-dealers paid Robinhood to execute their trades. Attorneys for Robinhood user named G. Kwan did not immediately reply to the request, and Kwan seeks damages on behalf of a class of potentially millions of users whose trades he alleges Robinhood executed at subpar prices while taking payment from brokers, known as payment for order flow, between 2016 and 2020. The issue of payment for order flow has recently attracted attention from U.S. Securities Exchange Commission, that's the SEC, who has said it raises concern about conflicts of interest. In this motion filed Tuesday, Robinhood said it had disclosed the payments and the case should be dismissed. Robinhood argued
81% of their business. It is their business selling the retail flow to Citadel and other brokers. That's what's so pernicious.
And the juicy data.
That it's
well, the order flow is the data.
That's what I mean.
What you're selling,
it is the data.
What you're selling is the flow of that. All they're doing is the front end, and the order goes to Citadel, and then Citadel nets off all the trades and knows where the market's going before the market does.
Before the market goes
there, all the flow. So this is ridiculous, and it's in the S1. And then this is the bribe. The bribe is, you can come into the the IPO and we'll pay the 70 million. But meanwhile, the entire business is running through somebody else's book who can front run you all day long.
So
Nicholas, I'm curious. Since the big, I'm sure you've been watching that 81%, right? Since the whole GameStop, drama, right? Has it gone up? It's gone up to 81%,
yes.
Right? So they've actually done more since it was exposed in a sense, right?
That is their business. Their business they're just the front end. It's the same as Uber, the same as Airbnb. It's just a shiny, toy that essentially is, stealing from the general public and is rooting through them, which is why it was so sad to see they didn't even understand that.
Remember at that time, Nicholas, they were effectively, I know the tone was, if I go back to the tone was, hang on, we had to do this. That's not really where we want our business to be. There was this kind of tense, right? No, exactly.
No, but leave out the GameStop stuff for just a second. Just this whole payment to order flow thing is nothing new. I'm not saying it's good, but it's been done for years. It's been done by, quite frankly, most brokerage firms, and that's how you get zero commissions. I think that's what right. people are missing. It's one or the other.
That is exactly the business, and it's just that they're being, the retail guys are being fooled, and this is why the meme situation, that's why that ruling that Tyler just read out was saying it's stock specific, because in the case of what happened with GameStop, it exposed the fact that behind the trading was the people that they were trading against, which was Citadel and then SAC or Point72, who came and bailed out Melvin Capital, who was their money. So that was why they were able to stop out the trading, because Robinhood aren't doing the trading, Citadel are, and that's why they were able to use the SEC to really stop the meme guys from winning. And that's what upset the meme guys. But the meme guys aren't good guys either, necessarily. They're manipulating the retail guys as well, because they should have known this was exactly the case and this would exactly happen, and the poor, people would get stuck in the middle.
So do you think that Robinhood as a concept at the idea stage actually came from Citadel or from Rob separately?
It's just a better front end for the same business that's been going on, as Ken said. This is the business. If you want commission free, this is how you do it. It's not commission free.
I get that. I'm just trying to think of who did. It's a little bit of a head fake in that. Do you think Robinhood came up with it independently before they ever met with Citadel, and then it was a matter of who?
No, if you're in Silicon Valley, you look at the business model, you say, look, there is no 3.0 or 2.0 version of TD Ameritrade or whatever, Charles Schwab, Interactive Brokers. Let's make a better front end. Let's do exactly what we were doing before and just enfranchise the millennial trader who haven't been exposed to stocks. And so you give them an interface that looks good and think makes sense. TikTok, and then you just enfranchise a whole new group of people. And this is why all Silicon Valley did was get together with Wall Street and say, hey, let's just put a lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't disagree with you at all. I would just add one quick thing, which is that when you're looking at what is the value proposition of a random app, it oftentimes really does boil down to something like that. But for the average Robinhood trader who really probably could give a fuck less, darn less, excuse me, if they're being front run by a big corporation because they just are not operating on the market mechanics of larger trade interests. I think there was a true sort of holy shit moment in terms of the whole Robinhood model of providing and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is a whole nother discussion. But I do think that there was sort of a value add does exist. It did come into play there. Whether or not that's fair or good or right or anything is a whole nother conversation.
They did come up with gamification. That was kind of new for a brokerage firm, and you can say whether that's good or bad, and whether it incentivizes people who don't know what they're doing to risk money. But gamification of stock trades was kind of a new concept.
So, listen, if you're the game though, which is exactly what's happening, is it's like you're just bringing in a whole bunch of naive people, and then really 80% of the revenue is being done by liquidity providers who are much more sophisticated and are scalping you. I'm not, I would have thought the SEC's role is to regulate that sort of behavior, but
if you are one of the 80% of, excuse me, Ken, 1 second. If you're one of the 80% of quote naive people, and you are, for better or worse, participating because you're enjoying this, and this is you might as well be gambling. I mean, you can do anything with your money. It's like the broader picture could very well be that 80% of people are getting somehow fleeced a little bit by Robinhood or the larger interests, but those individual people would probably tell you that they don't feel that way. They feel like, hey, I get to trade in and out of this market, whether or not I know what the fuck I'm doing to do it. And so I don't think they're feeling particularly fleeced. So.
Yeah, Nicholas, you and I probably agree on this issue about, I think where what the SEC should do and everything. But I've been in a number of these rooms with people who love Robinhood, and what you're going to hear from them, I'm just giving you their side of it, is it's like a libertarian thing. Everybody should get to do what they want with their money, and nobody should stop them for doing anything. And if they blow themselves up, that's their problem, and that's their attitude. And there's a lot of people out there now with that attitude, which is probably different than you and I think about it because we've been around a while. So,
Ken and Rossi,
I get that.
Ken and Rossi, hey Nicholas, how are you? Ken and Rossi, I would agree with you. And Ken, the unique thing that you just said about gamification of this process, if you think about Thinkorswim is an excellent platform that brought a lot of young people into this space of understanding it. And to Tyler's point above, in terms of social commerce and the promotions that happen or have been happening on TikTok, Ken, I've been on TikTok for over 2 years, probably since the beginning. And let me tell you, there's some very, very intelligent women in there and young young people that have been actually educating people on Thinkorswim. Notice I said Thinkorswim, which was TD Ameritrade's gamified platform to do stocks and stuff, and it's all regulated. I think to your point, which I agree with, because I was in another room talking about how investors invest and what they go for. Thinkorswim just got upgraded, and Robinhood became the next variant of Thinkorswim, right? With the gamification in the front end, the UI UX. And to Rossi and your point, I would agree with Rossi and Ken, because we might be in the same petri dish, that I don't think these people feel like they're being shysted. I believe they see themselves as libertarians to some degree. But then also you have the other side of it, which are people and individuals that have never been able to be in this space and are super curious about the space and are testing it out for themselves and growing their knowledge base, because I physically learned a lot about trading through Thinkorswim's education. And it's fascinating. It's inspired me to take technical analysis. It's inspired me to get certified by Chainalysis. So when you think about these things, I think the new generation of who the workers are going to be, I believe that the CBDC, the central bank digital currencies, and Ethereum are going to coexist, because what's ultimately going to happen is people like Nicholas with identity are going to be the ones that tag in to protect the identity, right, to do that piece. But the banks are going to have to find a way to keep themselves relevant. And the way that they're now seeing is that they have to be able to break bread with the decentralized platform behind, because that's going to run your data. And data's king. Here we go. The good, juicy financial data and juicy financial transaction data. That's going to be, exactly, that's going to be what the banks want. So they're going to have to acquiesce at some point, right? Because the banks know that you can't stop this tsunami, and they could do all the fear and doubt. But, you know this gentleman. Is it Sorosi or Soroso? The Soros, Soros? There's been a gentleman that's been fudding on
Soros?
Yes.
George.
He's been fudding on Bitcoin for years. And he was on someone was on a Joe Rogan podcast in 2019. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I'm sure you could go back in Joe Rogan's podcast. And this guy said, look, I was offered $5 million to shill Bitcoin by this guy, but I chose not to. So you see, and he's been in it since 2010 and 2011. So I don't think the naivety sits as many people assume. I think there's a lot of people that have been in this space for a long time, and they're just jockeying for position and trying to understand Web3 and understand how they could leverage this new technology and how they could keep themselves relevant as we move into the future, as Tyler loves all the talk about AI, tech, and innovation, and all the juicy data and the juicy social commerce that's coming. And the traditional old-fashioned banks need to get with the program. They're a little bit old-fashioned. You know what I'm saying? They need to get with the program. And the only way for them to get to the program or get in the program is to find something in their own ecosystem of processes in the financial services space where they could disrupt it a teensy bit. But you see, people like Robinhood have been funded to just make something better than Thinkorswim. That's my opinion on Robinhood.
Can I give a final thought? Final thought from my side here is to that point. I mean, I like a lot of what you're saying there, and I would just say, I just like, let's take an individual case study. Myself as an individual, for many years, I did, do my exclusive personal trading on TD Ameritrade, and I always kind of, I don't know, even at like larger trades or mid-sized trades, I always kind of just flinched at the $10 or $15 price tag or whatever, and it's no big deal. But like then I did really enjoy when Thinkorswim came online, and I did feel it was like a sort of gamified. I don't know. For me, it fit with what I was looking for at the time, maybe just generationally or whatever. And then I will say, I think the point that I would say here is that, like, if you have like a moral stand on who's making the big bucks and where and why, yeah, you're gonna have a whole lot harder time with a Robinhood type of situation as soon as you realize the sort of like deal flow that's going down there. But if you are literally just, as many people, and rightly so, I would argue, are sort of self-interested and just trying to figure out how to make it work best for themselves, and they have this interest in, like, having the fun and ability to sort of make trades in and out of something, relatively quickly and with a 0% price tag. I mean, it stands to perfect reason that, you know, some people may even be fully aware of like the fact that they're being totally front run. The whole thing is like basically cobbled together in order to like fleece large numbers of people in a more a more sophisticated way. But that's like besides the point. You know, you're getting your side of value. Same thing happens with Facebook, doesn't it? I mean, you're being fleeced out of all sorts of shit.
Can I just respond?
No, Rossi, can I
briefly?
sorry, can I just clarify one thing? I think there's the just from Amy's soliloquy or monologue, the whole thing, just the two or three things in there, because quite a lot of things can fill it in there. One, there is a choice that people will have to make, young people, on whether they actually buy the Robinhood stock, right? So that's one. Two, there's a very well-made case of saying, oh, what a great platform for people to learn about financial services. So I just want to separate those 2 points, because there are, you know, and what we're discussing here is partly also is the business model of Robinhood itself, so people can be informed by that discussion here, as well as the fact that, hey, what, you know, the merits of the platform for people to get into, you know, learning about these new tools and wonderful things that are coming. And the third thing, which we may want to go back to or not, is I was confused by the Joe Soros point, but I just wanted to bring those three different things. Go ahead, whoever's speaking. Thanks.
Hey, I just want to give 2 points. One, I think that yes, it's absolutely everybody's right to go to the casino. And it is important to understand that the casino does not mind paying out. In fact, it wants to pay out winners, and it's happy to take the losers. And at the end of the day, that sort of leads to your second point, is how does that casino make money? And that casino makes money by getting more people through the door. So to Robinhood's S1, transaction revenue went crazy last year. 170 million went to 720 million. Overall net revenue went from 277 to 958 million. Citadel, as we said, made up 34% of the revenue. They spent 157 million on ads, up from 119 million, and their crypto revenue went from 9 million to 26 million. Equities went from 50 million to 250 million, and options revenue quadrupled from 110 million to 440 million. Securities lending revenue went from 6 million to 96 million, and margin lending went from 19 million to 66 million. So that goes to the question of, would you invest in the business? Because it's growing like a weed. So yes, the casino is in force. Yes, the casino is owned by the traditional casino owners. And do you want to participate in owning that casino alongside your institutional investors? Probably yes. And the only question is, when the music stops, there will be people that get hurt, as they do in any form of gambling, because in order for the house to make its 4% net revenue or net income, people have to lose as well as win. And there were people in the last year who had bad outcomes, including an options trader who killed himself. So these are real issues, as well as acknowledging people's right to go and play in the casino.
I'm gonna read.
Tyler, you asked a specific question about whether the Robin.
Hold on, Kieran. I'm just going to read this quick article precisely on the point of the gentleman who killed himself, and then I'll turn it to you. And then Aaron works at Fidelity, and it'd be interesting to hear whatever thoughts he's able to share, which obviously will be limited. But being Fidelity is one of the biggest players in the entire space. Robinhood settles. This is the headline today about the gentleman who killed himself. 20-year-old trader who died by suicide. Robinhood settles lawsuit. And the headline just came out that Robinhood has settled a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of the 20-year-old trader who died by suicide after seeing a negative account balance of $730,000. The controversial trading app disclosed the settlement on Thursday, so just yesterday, in its IPO filing, which is why now I understand why it just came out now. Terms of the agreement were not disclosed. The family of Alex Kearns, a college student who traded options on Robinhood, accused the startup in February lawsuit of luring inexperienced investors to take big risks in sophisticated financial instruments without providing the necessary customer support and investment guidance. Kearns took his own life in June 2020 after mistakenly believing he owed $730,000, and his desperate attempts to get in touch with Robinhood went unanswered, according to his family. The lawsuit accused Robinhood of wrongful death, negligent infliction of emotional stress, and unfair business practices. Here's the quote. This matter was dismissed with prejudice following a statement between the parties, Robinhood said in its S-1 filing for its IPO. Now I understand why they included it as part of their S-1, to kind of bury any concerns that might have been lingering around this. Court filings indicate the settlement was reached in late May and the case was permanently dismissed June 21. Robinhood executives have previously said that they were devastated by the tragedy and pointed to efforts made to improve the platform's options trading, education efforts, and customer service. And that's that point. Go ahead, Kieran, and then we'll turn to Aaron. Earth to Kieran.
Hey, Tyler, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You asked us, Tyler.
1 second, Rossi. Go ahead, Kieran.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think you asked a specific question about whether this idea came from Robinhood or whether it was like from outside influence. So basically, most of the things that people don't talk about is that in 2015, there was this massive benchmark rigging case. It came about and a lot of the banks got fined like 10, 20 billion.
Just try and summarize without going way deep into the woods. Yeah.
So basically what it is that they used to control, the banks used to control the order books. So order books meaning that 4 p.m. fix, they had all the orders from institutional clients, corporate clients, retail clients. So if you like, FX, for example, is 5 trillion daily turnover.
I don't need the data of how many pork bellies are sold in Chicago on Wednesdays.
So basically, Tyler, what it is that after that there was a big investigation and big banks got fined about 5 to 10 billion. So what happened was that banks no longer allowed to have the order books of the clients. So what happened was that pushed a lot of that stuff into the outside. So that's where Robinhood came in, because there's no regulation for the outside of these guys in order to have the order books and sell it. But if you're a bank, you were regulated, so you can't no longer sell the data or tell the clients or hedge funds, just to get the fees about the order books you're holding. So I think that's what pushed the innovation outside, because there was a regulation saying banks no longer can have the order books or publish their order books to other clients.
So they're delegating. Okay, Aaron, is there any, as somebody from Fidelity, obviously you're not speaking, you're speaking just from your own perspective, but what's your personal perspective in this?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. And by the way, this is awesome. Like the fact that you can mediate this and we can have this debate is really, really great. It's great to hear.
Shall I bring in Jason Calacanis for a second? He might still
yes,
be
please.
awake. Okay.
Yes, please.
I was thinking about him from the beginning.
There we go.
Just wondering.
Okay, he's been pinged.
Aaron, you
go
ahead first.
It's a tough day for him to come on, right? Because it is the IPO day. So yeah it's good.
I think, thanks. I think if we take it back to Cal, where you were trying to summarize, and I think everything that everybody has said is correct, right? It's all correct. But if we take it back to the separate points, like I head up an innovation team at Fidelity, and again, speaking personally, my role is to play around with stuff for the future. So I've been playing around with VR for years. We've been doing quantum computing for years. So when we talk about the big banks have to push things forward and the big trading desks have to make sure they gamify things, we've done that years ago. We've tested it. We have a place in society to make sure we don't just create gambling out of trading, because that's not what trading is truly about, right? What Robinhood have brought to life is a gamified version of gambling to the degree into the masses. And we're not going to get into this right or wrong thing about whether it's good or not for people. And Alex is always top of our minds of what happened with him. But ultimately, what it comes down to is we can teach people. You can teach this younger generation what trading is about without having to put their 401ks or put their retirement plans at risk. So I think from that perspective, the gamification is right to be pushed, but it doesn't have to be pushed to the limits that things have been. And there are points here around where the SEC should play and what they should do. This is on, back to Nicholas's point about the house. This is on the house. It's down to each casino to make sure that they do the right things for everybody involved. It's not just about, pulling the wool over the eyes of the retail investor while Citadel in the back make all the money. So I think from that perspective, I think there's a place for us to play in this. and to teach this younger generation what's possible with investments. Back to where we're at with the whole point around, the Robinhood IPO and what the story initially was, which I think is a great story, by the way, Tyler. The fact that the retail investors can get access to IPO, to the primary market. There's a company in the UK called Primary Bids. They got behind PensionBee, who are an aggregator of pensions and 401ks. So this market is a way of alternative investing, right? So you as a retail investor getting in and planning for your future. But the way it's being perceived, because Robinhood's standard user at the front end is a younger generation who does day trading. The concern is that opening up the primary market through Robinhood creates now an even more empowered gambler who is even more anxious, who will bet more of their 401k and retirement plans into these IPO shares, which are even more volatile. And therefore, we're going to create a society of Gen Zs that are anxious, more Alexes may happen. And I think that's the thing we need to be careful by opening up the primary market of pre-IPO for the retail investor.
Okay.
Also, bear in mind that not all IPOs go up. And so, for the banks themselves who are going to lead these IPOs, the retail is only reliable in a hot market, in a hot stock. And there are many, many deals that need to get done through the relationships of, giving and taking, which go on between brokers and clients. So that's just something to be a practical thing to be aware of.
Yeah. We've managed to get through the first headline of the day. There, we did it. 40 minutes. Next headline. Twitter shows off new features it is testing, including a way to tweet only to a group of trusted friends, ability to tweet under different personas, and more. And you are going to have to see this with your own eyes to believe it from the Tech News Twitter account, which is very conveniently TNATW, which just happens to be the first letters of tech news around the world. And I'm sending that out right now so you can save it, read along with us on this. It appears to be here we go. You can see the photos for yourself where you can send your tweet. Now there's a little pull down menu right at the very top of your tweet. Right at the first letter of the tweet, it says, who do you want to send this to, everyone or trusted friends? And then you create your own bucket of trusted friends. And then your timeline shows trusted friends tweets first. So when you are scrolling through when you're reading Twitter as a viewer, the first tweets you will see are the ones that were sent by your friends to their trusted friends, if they've included you as part of their trusted friends. And another new feature under consideration is what they call reply language prompts. This feature would allow Twitter users to choose phrases they don't want to see in their replies. When someone is writing back to the original poster, these words or phrases would be highlighted, and a prompt would explain why the original poster doesn't want to see that sort of language. For instance, users could configure prompts to appear if somebody is using profanity or the word Trump or some other thing they find unbearable in a tweet. The feature wouldn't stop the poster from tweeting the reply. It's more of a gentle nudge that asks them to be more considerate. These nudges can have impact. For example, when Twitter launched a nudge that suggested users read an article before they amplify it with a retweet, it found that users opened the articles before sharing them 40% more. But in the case of someone determined to troll, it may not do that much good. The third and perhaps most complicated feature is something Twitter is calling facets. This is an idea about tweeting from different personas from one account. The feature would make sense for those who often tweet about different aspects of their lives, including their work life, their side hustles, their professional life with their family, and etc. And now you have different facets to your multifaceted personality. So you have Tyler, the podcaster or clubhouser, and then you have Tyler, the serial killer, and then Tyler, the apocalypse
life coach.
Yes, of course, the life coach, and the Robinhood day trader. And then when you tweet, you have to pick which of your multiple personalities from which you are now tweeting. And the question I want to pose to the panel is, are these features fixing or potentially causing more potential problems down the road. I mean, the point is that every time, and this is not related to Twitter, but let's focus on this. Let's use this as a case where when we build solutions to problems, we sometimes are inadvertently actually creating entirely new problems we weren't aware of, right? Like some of these features of allowing people to hide words with a star, 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 because they get offended by seeing a particular word. Is that potentially long-term? Is there potential long-term negative impacts to allowing people to obfuscate words that they find offensive? And is there a possibility of a potential negative outcome of allowing people to have multiple facets to their personality that they're tweeting from, for example?
I like the timing of this multiple facets thing with the whole infosec mini drama that's going on at the moment. That's whether it's intentional, accidental. That's really good timing.
Please explain.
On the back of that, this is an infosec account run by an individual who's female, and then basically she posted a bikini picture. And then there was a strong response from a number of accounts who may or may not be trolls. And then Twitter has kind of followed in this trend, as it always does, of jumping on the bandwagon, and everybody's using their professional accounts to post bikini pictures, including men and women. And this whole the conversation is, should you have a professional account, or should you have an account that is focused on cars, or focused on infosec, or focused on development, and then post non-related content to it? So it's been a small drama, but it's been a retweeted drama over the last couple of days, and this ties in really nicely with it.
That drama has now actually expanded because someone made a calendar of bikini infosec bikini people and did it without their permission. So now you have the question of publishing and rights, etc., that goes around it. Now, my only response to Tyler would be that people have been using sock puppet accounts to troll people anyway, because they're humans. So, and I believe that people do have multiple personalities online. And the advantage of these new features is they're moving it much more towards being WhatsApp or some form of chat app, rather than being the speaker's corner.
What would be interesting is if you can tell, sorry Tyler, from the outside whether one is linked to the other. That is, if you go to one where it's somebody in a bikini, if got an account where I'm in a recliner in a bikini, can you also see that is linked to my developer account, for instance? Does it say that, Tyler? Does it say?
It doesn't show that. You can look at the photo in the post that I just tweeted, and they give the example of what it's called My Facets. So again, at the very top of your tweet, you now are going to have two choices: a pull down menu that says which personality do you want to tweet this from, and to whom is allowed to view this, your approved list of followers or everybody. So you've got who you're going to send it from, which personality are you sending it from, which is now more limited, more granular, and who's able to view this. And that's the combination of those two things is really interesting. And then
if you monetize it, sorry, quickly, Ty, if you monetize it, you just described OnlyFans.
Right, but
it's the combination of all of them, right? It's OnlyFans, and you have a different personality on TikTok than Instagram, than Facebook, so it's the unification of the platform.
Well, check this out, because they did just add the super followers feature, which is a separate category of who can see this tweet, right? And again, oh boy, I think we just figured this out, why they need this, because porn stars don't always tweet about porn. And so they need their separate, non-porn star persona facet of their personality, and then they have their porn star professional facet of their personality, and that's why they need to pick, as you said, which facet am I tweeting from? Am I tweeting from my porn star facet, or my quote unquote normal facet? And then who's it going to? Is it going to everybody? Is it going to my very private curated list of followers, or my super followers, which are my paid followers? And that's
the bigger question. Yeah. And the bigger question is, Tyler, Sorry, go on, Dan. I've talked enough.
Yeah, well, people with two personas, couldn't they just set up two different accounts today? Wouldn't that
Yes,
work?
That's what they. That's what they do.
that's what they do. But yes, of course, this is essentially making that far simpler for everybody involved.
I think Instagram do this, don't they? They have a quick swap feature where you
they
can
do
go
have a
between
quick
the
swap,
two.
but the iteration of this the is super. This is perfectly designed. A much better execution of how to do this. The way that I'm looking at this.
Tyler?
What about just very quickly, and then
Yeah.
I'll show just very quickly is how is this going to affect work? Because as we're moving towards like closer and closer to where things like you can be a professional nurse, for instance, and it's societally accepted to also have an OnlyFans because you've got to pay off bills and etc. and etc. etc. You're just making the best of the broken world that we've handed the next generation. So how is this going to affect, say, if you go for a job and let's say you're a developer and then it turns out you have this second account that's linked to it that does have bikini pictures or even nude shots and that kind of thing? Are we going to see a rise of this drama? Of in the workplace?
How does this work when you arrive at the border of some country and they say, as does happen in some countries now, please give us all of your social media accounts?
Oh shit! Or
You
a
know how
account that's playing both sides.
This is why you need privacy.
Tyler, there's another sort of nefarious and quite sad part to all this, and I think the women in the audience would probably empathize with what I'm about to say, and it's not always pleasant. How much more crime is going to happen towards women when we start having these multiple accounts as well? Because part of what happens now is there's no safety for women when they're influencers or porn stars or sex workers, as we call them. There's no real safety for them. And I know because I have a friend that was doing a thesis in Netherlands about this. There's a big challenge because we're still in a world where it's patriarchally dominated, where women still feel unsafe. I mean, there's a statistic in the United States that women will die by the hands of domestic violence before they die of heart disease. And unfortunately, I don't think the tech world tends to keep the safety of women or what women do or how women are objectified in mind when they create these new features, because that's just creating another drama that's going to make another set of women have to figure out how to navigate it. Because at least with having different accounts, you could ignore one account that's like a trolling account, right? But if you start making your personas, it also starts getting very, very tricky. And to Nicholas' point, this is why I'm a super advocate for anonymization of certain identities, because this sex worker does need to make a living, and it's the oldest way to make a living in the world is prostitution. But at some point, it may not be, like Tyler, you're saying, it may not be something that would be approved of or smiled upon when they travel. And at what point do we look at the ethics of this? At what point do we see the impact on women? Because many of these applications, they tend to be very heavily thought-wise, and I know Cal will get this, thought-wise. They tend to be geared more from the place of a masculine perspective. I would like to know what a woman would think about having multiple personas, for example, because Instagram has the quick switch, which I love, but I don't know if I want to have a different persona, because now you have people perceiving you differently. And to Carl's point, that's a really tricky thing. But this is also, I'm an advocate for universal basic income, because at some point, it doesn't matter if I'm a yoga teacher, it doesn't matter if I'm a technical consultant, doesn't matter if I'm a founder, it doesn't matter if I'm, a tantra coach. It doesn't matter. I am still me as a human being, and I could still deliver against my character and my professionalism. But if people start to judge that person, which we're in a society of judgmental people these days, where are we going to go? Because I just don't see this going anywhere well.
I think it can be argued that with today's generation,
I think it's
they
exactly
already
the
have
opposite.
multiple personalities as such, especially digital identities online. I think that's already.
But the digital identities are good because as long as they have the anonymity. Do you see what I'm saying? But people could, like Tyler said, people could go back to it and find you, and it's not difficult to do.
No, they can't. So I think, Amay, there's one important feature that you need to read the article, because it will completely obliterate your point here, which is of the photo that they show, it's a person named Brad. And so Brad, whenever he tweets now, right before he tweets, he has to pick which of his facets he's tweeting from. And in this case, Brad has 4 personality facets. He's got traditional Brad, who has 1.7 thousand followers, and it's a non-private account, meaning it's a public account. Then he's got Brad at work with 1.1 thousand followers, also a public account. Then he's got his daddy Brad, which is his baby photos, which is a private account of 64 followers, and only people he approves can see his Daddy Brad account. And then he's got Brad on a bike for his bicycle friends, and then he's got 19 followers. That's also a private account that only his 19 bicycle friends that he's approved can see. So giving Brad these new tools of which account he sends from, and also simultaneously in any of the, regardless of which one he picks, if he picks the two non-private accounts, the traditional Brad and the Brad at work, he also has the now additional bonus feature of saying, yes, this is going to be blasted publicly or only to my approved special friends. These new tools are, I would argue, I would wager heavily, were designed by the women product developers at Twitter precisely to address the concern that you're expressing.
I was going to agree. I would agree with understanding Tyler's point that you will have private personas and public personas, and that people do that anyway. And I think, to your point, Amy, that that people have multiple archetypes, and it was Jung who discussed and brought up the whole idea of archetypal behavior, and we all do it in the offline world. When you're at a football match, you're different than you are at your parents' table, and your language changes when you're with your mates than when you're necessarily with your wives or whatever, girlfriends or whatever. So people do change in the real world as well. I think that the issue of privacy, however, is to acknowledge that the only person that will have the panopticon of you will be Twitter. So that privacy account that you're using, Twitter, it's not private. It's private to, yes, the people that will be the audience, but Twitter will know exactly your multiple personalities, right, and will cater to you accordingly.
Correct.
The additional piece is to understand that in terms of women, we have to be aware that OnlyFans, whilst liberating people's ability to make money, is still charging a giant tax on sex workers in excess of 20%. And the Square and the Jack Dorsey move is to be able to allow those people onto the Twitter platform, and then to use the payment rails that they're going to try and use with the Lightning Network, or they're going to try and use with their payment network with Square, etc., so that tipping becomes the OnlyFans subscription and Substack equivalents and all of those things, and that ultimately those should be fully using zero-knowledge privacy. They probably won't, but they should be.
Thank you, Nicholas. Tyler, I have a question for you on the Twitter, because you made a very, yes, I would love to know who the developers were. That'd be a really awesome thing. That's the first question. So if you can find that out, I'm quite curious. Number two, because I know you know a lot of folks. Number two actually has to do with these payment rails that Nicholas is talking about as well. At what point does it become something where, how is the person now verified? Because that's also Twitter's claim to fame as well, as verified accounts. How does that now change the game? If someone's got to verify you, I mean, you got to be the real deal who you are. That's how's the verification process going to work?
Okay, you just brought in a whole new interesting point here, because
Welcome to the mind of a woman.
Yes. So they just announced that they're bringing back verifications, and I have predicted, and I'm more confident in my prediction with each growing day, that they're actually going to require you become verified before long. And I think the governments are going to push this on them, and I think they actually want it themselves. But they've been delaying it now for over a decade. But that's when you have a verified account, you start to want to have multiple facets to your personality as a verified account owner.
And that makes more sense.
Right.
The only way you can receive money and send money is if you are verified, which goes back to Stripe identity and the implementation of identity, which is why we always say you need to be self-sovereign, you need to have full privacy around your identity. Otherwise, when you do get to that border, you will not have the ability to protect yourself, because people will be sharing information, across Five Eyes, etc.
But it gets really interesting, because if you've got by the way, also, now you have all of your facets under the same email. And to Nicholas's point is, they now know you are these previously 5 different sock puppet accounts that you had or whatever under different emails and different passwords that were a pain in the ass every time you deleted the app and reinstalled it and reset it or whatever. And you have to remember all your different passwords and all your different emails to have your different accounts. This is a far better way, all under one email. And now they can more accurately manage you as a consumer who's viewing ads. They know that you're actually all one of the same person. So it's of a good benefit
I mean,
to Twitter.
I really hope you're not individually remembering your passwords and emails to different things. Everybody, please don't do that. Just have a password management solution.
Right. Still a pain in the ass to have 5 different accounts to log into, which is how the app works today, where you have literally different accounts with different usernames and passwords and phone numbers that you need to associate with those to reset those passwords generally. And so it gets quite complicated.
And imagine building a business on those platforms, then becoming deplatformed. And remember that all of your information around your KYC, AML to trade is linked to your telephone, and your telephone is linked to GPS. And while they all say, oh, we're not tracking you, we're going to go for cohorts. Cohorts sounds like facets, sounds like, archetypal information. And then they bucket you into a cohort. And guess what? If the government changes, there'll be someone calling at your door with the GPS coordinates to all of your opinions.
Nicholas, there's a team in Twitter which does all this scenario analysis based on reinforcement learning models. So all of these new features are not just solving some present problem, but they are quite retrospective in nature, and it's related, and it relates to what DeepMind did like a few weeks back. They basically trained a multi-agent system in which what they observed is that they just provided a penalty function for socially disapproved behavior and a simple reward function for socially approved behavior. And what they observed after few iterations is that there are so many alien behavior which came out of that multi-agent system because those agents were trying to just optimize their reward function. So imagine that system getting applied on Twitter data historically. They can literally see what sort of culture is going to be popular in next 5 or 10 years. It would be something like someone predicting a woke culture in 1980s. So they can really at real time in that enforcement learning model or scenario analysis see these culture. If these present set of features remain there, what's going to be the scenario, and then they can actually correct for those. And I think I believe that these new features are pretty much could be partly a correction for a lot of things which can happen, and the most probabilistic scenarios which can happen on that Twitter platform. So that's I wanted to just call that out.
That's exactly correct. And if you look at my PTR, you'll see that gene culture coevolution is absolutely at the core of humanity. And when you imagine that the mimesis, and we know all about meme stocks, we were talking about Robinhood, this is all about mimesis. And so the genetics plus the mimetics are what drives us as a culture. And if you can imagine that your perceptions control your behavior, and your perceptions are stored in the black mirror, and that they are completely interrogable to AI, we talked about public open AI and this WorldCoin the other day, you now know why self-sovereign conscious agency is absolutely critical to the future of humanity.
Yeah, and that's why we are so confused why this particular feature is being implemented. That's exactly the reason, because that's quite different.
Yeah, but there's also it's clearly related to the fact that the monetization is coming into Twitter, and you as a creator are going to have different characteristics. You're going to have your monetized character of who that is selling stuff as a personality who's promoting goods and products and services that you're trying to monetize. Because they're adding that into Twitter simultaneously at the moment. And then you're going to want to have your just me and my friends that hang out at the park on Wednesdays, making jokes of people passing by, which is a totally different personality, which, by the way, in the age of cancel culture, you need to keep these things very separate, right? So I'm starting to see why they're getting into so much of this facets of your personality and who has access to each of these facets of your personality, and controlling how much, where exactly you're monetizing, which parts of your facet of your personalities are going to be monetized, which ones are going to be very exclusive to yourself or to everybody. By looking at both ends, the the facets of personality and the additional cross. It becomes a multiplier of who gets to see your blasts. So it's my pick. It's two different filters, and when you cross the two filters, you get the multiplier. So now you've got 8 different permutations of how you create a tweet. If you have 4 different facets and 2 different audiences, you actually have 3 different audiences. You've got the public audience, your personal private audience, and then your paid followers. 3 different audiences and 3 different facets. You've got now 9 different possibilities of tweets, essentially.
And 9 different advertising slots that you can sell to monetize the individual.
But I love how I love their genius move in now getting you an all under one email, one phone number, one verified account. Because good luck verifying all of the facets of your personality if they were actually separate accounts, as we have today. They want to verify all of them.
This is tied in. Yeah. This is tied in also to Apple, blocking the universal device ID, access. I believe, So this kind of, it's this interesting cascading thing, and it's you're dead on too, Tyler or Nicholas too. Is like if you have 9 different permutations, there's 9 different groups of followers and 9 different ad groups, like you were saying, and then also Twitter would own and know who is in each one of these groups, even if they're private or not, right? So you kind of know who's the taboo people, etc. So, anyways,
now you can be nudged.
Just quickly, the usage of the word facets is really interesting because going forward, I think we're going to see these situations where, for instance, you have somebody who is promoting Nike, who has a mutually exclusive contract with them to promote Nike, but then in another facet, they're then promoting Reebok, for instance, and then the legalese argument is going to be, well, what constitutes as an account and what constitutes as a facet, if you can claim it as a facet. So I think there's going to be arguments going forward over on
that call, I know who's going to win, right?
Go for it.
Nike's going to push it down, right? Like if in that particular situation, like Nike's going to say, hey, you can't have these 5 accounts, and they'll just sort it out.
But you see my point, though, right?
I get it.
The legalese of the usage of the word.
No, I get it. But here's another angle. I just want to it's anecdotal, but my teenage kids, right? One of the things is what they do right now is they just don't go to a platform because at least responsible kids, and I like to think my kids are responsible, who knows, but they're trying to get jobs, right? And they're trying to one of them's employed, right? And so, but they're still kids, to Tyler's point, right? They're still hanging out, they're doing stuff. Well, the response that I get from Anushka really generally is that she won't use the platform, right? That's how she does, because it's kind of, she doesn't want to create another complicated thing. So she'll go to another platform maybe where she's more her teenage self, and then on another platform where she's showing a more professional image on LinkedIn or whatever, and that might exclude people from certain segments. So it might be that it starts to attract some of these platforms that are getting more aged, if you like maybe even Clubhouse, start to attract another segment too. So it's just adding to your point, Carl.
You've just given me a thought, though. You could just give me a thought, though. What happens if you want to remove the data or your history or the posts that you've done from a certain facet? Normally, at the moment, if you have an account that, you were saying there as a child or as a teenager, you do things and you say things that you might not necessarily want to carry on into adult life. So I wonder what the mechanisms are going to be under the hood in the APIs for Twitter, where if you want to remove assets, will you be able to remove all history, all tracking data, all posts, all things that you've associated with? The fact that you're a Republican and now now 10 years later you're a Democrat, 5 years later you're a Democrat. But also any embarrassing pictures and stuff that you posted. I wonder if you'll be able to do that from a facet. You'll be able to say, clear this facet and all of that content goes. Because if they haven't done that and people use these facets as a layer of protection around activities they wouldn't necessarily want to associate with themselves, and then they go to remove it and they realize, oh shit, you've got to remove your entire account. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Carl, even if they let user remove all the data, that won't harm them because they have already built a persona around those set of data, a second order value from that data and store it, which is
not talking about Twitter. I'm talking more about from the user's perspective. Will they be able to remove all the data?
They won't be able to. They won't be able to remove all the data from the facet because it's been published in the account. Right, because you've signed an end user license agreement whenever you move on to one of these platforms, and that they own all the information and they're giving you access. You're the product, right? That's the whole point. And so until you can have a platform owned of, by, and for the people in a way that is using zero knowledge privacy so that you can have verifiable proofs, but that you own and that are on a distributed ledger. That's the whole promise of the future. And by the way, to your point, Carl, which was well made about personas, you already have this case where you have Prince, who then became the sign known as Prince, for example, or you have people that was P. Diddy and then Puff Daddy, and then, and it's the same way. That's the whole reason for NFTs, is that you could have two different, I think it's, there's the Weeknd has a different personality, or you could be publishing music under two different identities, for example, or Chance the Rapper has a number of different identities, I think. So when you think about it like that, you'd say, well, is the limit of my being, given that you can be, also multiple genders and everything else, is the limit of my being one? So what is identity? And these are all the things that, it's really just a root of trust that is associated with a whole bunch of history that you've created.
I just think it's to summarize and to simplify it, is that now that we've introduced the commerce layer into social media, you've now got different. You've now are businessifying, commercifying people, and that brings out different facets of their personality when money gets involved. When there was no money involved, you were more holistic, less conflicted. Once money gets involved, funny how different aspects of people's personalities get amplified and kind of curtailed as a result of money entering the conversation. And now we've got to create these different facets of our personality.
That's the reason why people say, how do you do, rather than how do you be, because how do you do relates to your business. That's why that phrase came from. How do you do? It was all about business personality.
Maria.
Well, Tyler,
hold on, Armish. Hold on, buddy. There was a lady, Maria, was trying to jump in. Go ahead, Maria.
Hi guys, good morning. Actually, I have a question for Nicholas, because as we are kind of professing that there's going to be like those decentralized networks where we own our own data, my question is only who's going to pay for the servers if people don't want to pay for networks right now and they rather pay with their data? Like, how are we going to fund this decentralized?
That's a brilliant question. That's exactly the point of having a public blockchain, is that you need to run a proof that runs on regular PCs, on mobile phones, and that enables everyone to participate fairly, because that's the infrastructure. So you're making exactly the perfect point, is that you cannot compete against Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. They are walled gardens that you have an Apple ID, they know everything about you. Google, they just delayed the cookie apocalypse, but they were trying to bring that on. And the reason why they're delaying all these things is because of the antitrust actions that the government is taking. But as we saw with Facebook the other day, they're winning because they have much better armies of lawyers and etc. Same with Robinhood, they get this dismissed. That's the way that the world works these days. So you're evidencing exactly the problem, is that surveillance capitalists or surveillance venture capitalists create binary outcomes of winners between Ubers and Lyfts and those types of businesses by putting the most money into loss making, so subverting the economics of the modern day or the previous economic system. And then you create massive barriers, because you're absolutely right. You cannot run a service like Twitter without massive server infrastructure and an AWS, etc. And so the challenge for every blockchain and every public effort is, how do you host a public version? And our solution is using public blockchains that can be run on a regular PC. But that's a great question, and that's as quick an answer as I can give you.
Okay. Let's jump. Now we've done two. Radeja, you had a comment?
Yeah, just on a separate note, Twitter also actually has come up with another change. They're coming up with labels that identifies misinformation.
Yep.
So they have different kind of labels. A red label, which would actually say that, which wouldn't allow users to reply, like, or share that content. Yellow for content that actually isn't actively misleading. So it's in the works.
Yeah.
So that was on a separate news for Twitter.
Exactly right. Yeah. They apply a label and a warning message to the tweet, showing a warning to people before they share or like the tweet, to reduce the visibility of the tweet or Twitter. Yeah, they're basically and by the way, this is powered both algorithmically and by humans in this, I forget what they're calling it, bird watchers, they call it, who are humans who go in kind of like Wikipedia editors and do some sort of group decision making around if this tweet is accurate or not. But they're starting to automate, as we saw in India, by the way, when the official Indian Twitter account had a little pop-up that said these tweets, by the way, that you're about to look at might be misleading. And that's a whole new other dimension. But funny enough, we did mention one last little, I find it interesting. One of the features that nobody really touched on here was the one where they're allowing people to choose words that they never want to see ever again and make it a star, 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 star. And they show you the first letter. And is that is there a potential? Is that healthy ultimately, that people are going to be able to block out everything that they never want to see?
They could give a mass account to India and then let them block out everything that they don't potentially want to see, and then that solves the issue between Twitter and India.
Hey, India, yes, if you don't like negative sentiments, here's a very nice tool for you. You can just type in all the phrases you don't want to see, magico presto, problem solved. You'll never see them. I wonder if China would opt into such a system. Yeah, very interesting. So other big headlines at the moment: Apple releases Mac OS Monterey public beta now. So the new Mac OS, and I assume the new iOS, which the developers have been using in testing in a beta testing format, are now open to the public. And that means they're very near ready for full public release, normally probably 2 more weeks. Where if you want to get the non-beta version, which I recommend you wait for the non-public beta version, honestly, because there's always a few bugs in the beta version. It doesn't work with all your existing apps typically in the beta form. But Mac OS Monterey public beta with iCloud private relay safaris, revamped new user interface, and FaceTime and SharePlay, and all the other new features that they highlighted at the WWDC live stream that we all watched together. So if you want to get on the public beta, you can now. And it's also revealed, sources confirm that the very long-awaited new MacBook Pro 14-inch and 16 inches will be coming be announced in September, and probably available for order around the same time at their annual September event, where they always show the new upcoming iPhone, which is iPhone 13, which has also been confirmed is coming in pink, and also doesn't really have very much new features or functions this year, aside from being pink. And more notably, it's expected to have the thumbprint reader is coming back, so you don't have to rely on the face scan to open the phone. Again, perhaps a little more privacy related thing there, but this time the thumbprint reader is not a separate button, it's under the screen, which is nice, and which Android users have had for quite a while now. New Facebook test asks users if someone, this is wild. You thought that Twitter conversation was interesting? Hold on to your hats. And thank God Michelle's here. New Facebook test is prompting users, if someone they know might be, quote unquote, becoming an extremist. Is a friend of yours becoming an extremist? Facebook wants to know. And it simultaneously also asking you or alerting you that in fact you might be becoming an extremist if they suspect that that you're becoming an extremist. You'll soon be greeted with warnings that warn you that you've been consuming potentially extremist-inducing content, and maybe that might, if your too many friends suggest that you might be becoming an extremist, that will, of course, alert the Facebook algorithms to watch you and analyze your content a little more closely. And that could assumedly trigger the alert that you'll receive that you've been consuming extremist-inducing content. Thoughts from the stage on this one? But let's give Michelle the opportunity to give her personal, non-Facebook kind of perspective on this, Michelle? Okay. Free for all, everybody. Go ahead. Feel free to jump in. Facebook, I got to tweet this out so everyone can see it. And I got to find one that actually has the screenshots, because CNN didn't include the screenshots of these ads that people are now going to see. So give me 1 second to find a version with the screenshots of these new alerts that you are potentially becoming an extremist, perhaps according to your friends who have flagged you as such. Anyone with a
the only
thought on
thought
this?
that comes to me while you're looking for that, the thought that comes to me is what is extremist in one country is different in another country, right? So then we're back to that discussion about these kind of
Precisely, Carl.
global value system, challenges, right? So that's one thought that comes to my mind.
So we've kind of seen this a little bit. We've kind of seen this a little bit in Nextdoor. We've seen it in Grammarly. So you'll get warnings now of your language, the tonality of your language, the wording that you're using, and what it means grammatically. So what we're heading to, I mean, it's starting off with extremists, but I think maybe are we heading towards a situation where in the next year or two, the receiver will specify maybe a rating of what they want to or don't want to receive, and then if you're sending something directly to someone, then it will, give you a smiley face or a sad face, depending on the tonality of or not just the extremism, but whether it's a nasty thing you're saying or a mean thing, or potentially could be racist or sexist or anything like that, given whatever social norms at the time.
Can I tell you?
Hold on, no, hold on, everybody. Before we start pontificating, let me actually read the actual pop-ups so everyone has the right sense here. So the first one is. Are you concerned that someone you know is becoming an extremist? We care about preventing extremism on Facebook. Others in your situation have received confidential support. And then you can tell Facebook which of your friends you worry are becoming an extremist. The other side is you may have been exposed to harmful extremist content recently. Violent groups try to manipulate your anger and disappointment. You can take action now and protect yourself and others. And they'll ostensibly tell you which of the sources. Now, interestingly, the source that had all of this happens to be RT.com from Russia, which very, very, very interestingly, RT has a comedy show called Redacted Tonight, which is actually quite funny, but do keep in mind it's from the RT's channel, and I follow Redacted Tonight on Facebook, and I've noticed lately when there's a video in the video feed for Redacted Tonight, it says under the title of the show, it says this is Redacted Tonight, and it gives me a warning every time now that this is Russian state propaganda. They're now labeling this show, this comedy show, as alerting me that this is kind of potentially extremist content itself. And now they're alerting everyone who follows or sees, gets exposed to this comedy show. And now RT, being a comedy show, start every segment by saying, hey, welcome to Redacted Tonight, a show produced in America by Americans about America, which is, of course, extremist or whatever. And they're kind of embracing it and kind of calling it out, how they think it's absurd that they're being labeled as extremists, because it's, anyway, but it's a really interesting development. Go ahead, Ross.
Publisher is the Russian government.
Lakeisha, go ahead, and then I would like to make a point after Lakeisha.
Okay, thanks. No, I was saying that I think it could backfire simply because for many Facebook users, echo chamber, and so if I get a flag that or if I'm asked to rate my friend, let's say, and say that she's becoming an extremist, and I've liked 95% of her posts, for the past 8 months, and then I think that it would be a natural progression for people to internalize the sentiment of, oh, so you're calling me an extremist now? So, I mean, I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the effort. I actually like, sites like RT being, at least outed in terms of who's actually running them. But in terms of flagging people and tagging people, I just don't know how they're going to be able to execute on it.
So I'm going to share just the quickest anecdote here because I feel like it's relevant to this conversation, and it just happened like minutes ago, and it's new to me. Perhaps it's not new to anybody else, but I'm on Twitter all the time, blah blah blah, and I I tweeted a sort of a tweet where I kind of, I did the thing where you do F and then star 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 to say the F word, and I was making a pretty, a very valid, reasonable point that I think anybody who reads the tweet will very much understand the
That
intent
was
with
your
which it
mistake.
and
Yeah.
how relevant it is. And then what happened was, as soon as I sent it, I get a message that says like, "Hey, are you sure you want to send this message?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like this is exactly what I meant to say." And everybody who's going to read it is going to get it and get the tonality and understand it. But I'm worried that like by clicking yes, I'm sure, I'm like informing some sort of AI machine that may not be quite as aware of the social context of the tweet, that I'm like, sending angry tweets or something, which it wasn't. It was, contextually, obviously, just makes perfect sense. You had to be there, but it's one of those things. So I wonder about that.
Yeah.
Well,
If I could
Tyler,
just
I
say
would say
two
this.
small things.
Yeah.
Just to the original point. One is one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. Number two, how soon before they're paying for informants, because that's the characteristic of traditional autocracies, is people would inform on each other, whether it was Nazi Germany, Eastern European, the Stasi, or in China where they have policing of each other. And once you put incentives behind it, then you get groupthink. And when you get groupthink, you get murders.
Yeah, Nicholas, exactly. But I would say this. This feature would help Facebook study a lot about the people who are tagging, and they would also can derive a lot of business value out of this new social interaction which they would treat. So it looks like there is a possibility that this could be a bait feature, which, because the extremism itself is quite, definition itself is not very absolute. So, but it's quite a jazzy thing. So this basically could help Facebook learn a lot of new behavior around and not actually solve the problem of extremism as such.
Okay. So we've now managed to cover 3 big headlines today. So but there's a
Can
lot
I
of
say something?
Yeah, 1 second, Froz. I just want to make the point that it's, by the way, Twitter again is bringing back their verification. They've not had it, really. I mean, an incredibly small percentage of Twitter users have been verified. Facebook as well isn't fully verified. The point I would make is, would not a lot of these issues that are stemming from a lot of misinformation, a lot of, you're being exposed to extremist views, blah, 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 blah. Could not all of this have, a lot of it, been preemptively circumvented by having a verification process from the very, very, very beginning, where everyone who onboards is very carefully verified, and you are known to be verified in the platform? That would have stopped a whole lot of potential because now they're going into moderation overdrive, where they're adding layers upon layers upon layers. And now it gets very tricky, because now that Facebook has been warned that somebody was becoming an extremist, and now they do something and they go do some crazy extremist activity somewhere and lives are lost, is Facebook responsible now because they didn't report it to the authorities?
It
Tyler,
goes
at
back
the
to the
beginning,
Section 230 thing. It goes back to the section. Sorry, Cal. It goes back to the Section 230 thing and the publishing, and where the real tip of the spear will be is in libel, because at the moment you're not liable for libel and slander because you're hiding behind a sock puppet, right? But as soon as they can associate it with you, then you've got legal repercussions as well. So they didn't want to tie anything to verification because it would have restricted the addictiveness of the platform.
You could argue that 500,000 people died because of Facebook, being taken over and manipulated for the election. And then what happened with
Dan, if
COVID
I can
after
just
that?
jump in real quick because I've
Go ahead,
been
Frost.
waiting for a second. Thanks a lot, Tyler. So just I wasn't looking at the screen, and apologies for that, but there was a very interesting point that someone brought up about when they tried to send out a message, and the app warned them and said, "Do you really want to send this out?"
Right.
See, from the perspective of someone who was never on Twitter and came on specifically for Clubhouse and individuals like you to be able to look at your tweets and understand and read and get more informed. I mean, the people and friends that I have in here are some of the most informed individuals that I've had in my whole life, to be very honest, in terms of tech or whether it be other subjects. And when you look at these tweets now that we send out as a group, and I would call this group as being the unplugged group per se. Now, if you look at those tweets and that individual that was saying that, if it made him think before sending that message out as to, this artificial intelligence that might get this wrong and might, downgrade me or maybe misanalyze me or report me or do something like that, that creates an automatic bias to cutting down the quality content on Twitter, from my perspective. And the quality content on Twitter is people like the people in this room, excluding myself. Because every time you tweet out, for example, or someone tweets out and writes 2 sentences or 3 sentences on it, saying, this is what I think, this is what's going to happen, what do you guys think? That makes them think twice. I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Okay, so I just got a DM before this room opened, right before the room opened, that from Moneypenny, Nick Moneypenny, the lady with the British accent, Cal, that you'll remember.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So she has on her Twitter account where she says she was banned from Clubhouse. And she says is causing many, being banned from Clubhouse is causing many really vulnerable people to be driven back into desperation and loneliness by complete lack of any customer care, because there's no recourse really when you're kind of banned, as she was. And she's even saying you're playing with people's lives, and this kind of. And by the way, pretty much anyone can be banned if you get a group of people working against you to block you, and you get too many blocks simultaneously. They put you in a 5-day quarantine without you really knowing that it might even be temporary. And you can hear from her tweet where she does a video of herself in a selfie form where she's clearly incredibly distraught.
Well, I mean, I think it really sucks too, because that's why Charles isn't here too, right? Somebody either on stage or in the audience,
right.
and it's not single anybody out, but it's just this forum is and Tyler, this is your guys' room, and I'm their guest, but I've always felt that it's an open exchange of ideas, even if your opinions don't align. And if you don't agree with those people, that's fine, but silencing them and keeping them from this room that we all enjoy is really sucky. And I'm sorry, I'll probably get blocked by whoever
No,
it
but
is
Chris,
now
can I
next.
aggregate it back to just 1 second? Sorry, guys. So can I just aggregate it back to just not the blocking by room, etc. Back to the Miss Moneypenny thing there. She, Tyler, is that she's blocked from Clubhouse completely, right? Is that
Correct.
what she's saying? I'll go look at it.
Yes.
But
And she
yeah,
went, and
okay,
I'll
okay.
tweet it right now so people can see it. But basically, she also makes the point that she went out and bought separate phones and separate SIM cards so she could come back in, and she, but she makes an interesting point that some people are going to take this incredibly difficult because if all of their friends exist in Clubhouse, that you've now cut them off from their social network, which is more than just being kicked out, quote unquote, being kicked off of an app.
Now
You've now removed me from everybody I know, and now
from
it's
life, right? No,
yes,
no,
you
this is
just
powerful. So
right.
yeah.
So
No, can I? Sorry, Tyler. I didn't mean to. It's a passionate subject for me personally, because since my kids were, and I'm an old guy, so maybe I'm making this an old guy conversation, and I don't mean to, but one of the things my wife is a wonderful teacher. Like she's a teacher of primary school children in the UK, and she's dedicated her entire life to do that. Literally dedicated her life to do that. And some of you will meet her, and you'll know what I mean. But here's the thing. So we ever since our kids were growing up, they're growing up in Minneapolis, US, and then California, Minneapolis, and then now the UK. We try to have dinner most nights, and we talk about stuff. And nowadays, I talk about some of the stuff that's here, and they're teenagers, so it's kind of fun. But when they're younger, we trying to navigate the whole social media world and their school and what do they do. The one thing that we used to talk about, and mostly inspired by my wife, is that please don't give these platforms too much power in your life, right? And because that's what happens when it becomes one platform or another platform, you've literally given that much power to it that you feel that distraught when they cut you off, right? Because they could cut you off for a million reasons, and some legitimate, some others, whatever. But it's just giving these something too much power is one of the things that we discuss. So yeah, I feel sad for her. I'll go read that thing because she was on this room 2 or 3 times, and wonderful contributions, right?
Yep.
Cal, Tyler, this is
Yeah.
Lale. I don't know this lady, but one thing I wanted to say, it is also possible that it's a limitation of the platform as well. One of our co-hosts in one of the rooms that we always have him, I saw a text in the back channel that he was not being let in the room. And everybody said, no, try this, try that. And he finally, apparently, he had to use another device to get in. I don't know what happened. Nobody knows who blocked him or what happened. But I'm saying that it could be some sort of bug as well or anything like that. That is a limitation of the platform, maybe. I'm just saying. But I totally agree with you, Cal, because I remember when Instagram was being, a peak and hot among teenagers. One of my friend's daughter actually came home one day and she was crying so badly that such and such person is the star of the Instagram now, and I look ugly. I cannot be in Instagram. I cannot post my picture, so it's horrible. I'm Lola, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Lala. So I want to jump through, see if anyone is burning with the headline. I've now got about 50 to blast through. No doubt some of them will inspire some deeper comments, but does anyone have a super particularly hot headline?
Yes.
Go, let's
Hey,
go.
Tyler.
Mahogany. Can we get
Mahogany and Messi? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. So mine is from my geographic location. It's Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
They were the first country to ban the J&J and AstraZeneca due to concerns about blood clotting.
Mm-hmm.
And last week they announced that after looking into it again and new reports that they're going to stick with that decision.
Okay.
But I know from personal experience, one of my colleagues requested the J&J, so you can still get it here. He just wanted the convenience of a single dose. So you can still get it here, but officially they're not recommending AstraZeneca and J&J.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Did you guys cover Flipkart and Chopsy?
Not yet. Hold that thought. Messi was in the queue, and then we'll do that one.
Thank you, Tyler. Zipline, this is a news close to, where I am from Rwanda. Zipline, I'm sure most of you know, arguably the world's drone delivery for emergency medical supplies and other things, especially here in Africa, where blood supply here in Ethiopia, where I am, when accidents happen, it's just as impossible to have blood and medical supplies to save lives. So this is what they do. They just raised $250 million in an equity financing, bringing their valuation, because what, $2.75 billion. So I love them what they do, because Africa is just leapfrogging. Instead of trying to get the infrastructure going and the stuff, they are just coming up with amazing tech-based innovative solutions. So I really love them. So yeah, I just want to point out what they did.
Thank you, Messi. Yep. And what was the India one? Flipkart?
Yeah, Flipkart. Apologies, Messi, I didn't see you were speaking. So Flipkart has launched its app called Chopsy for small entrepreneurs. And the reason why it's interesting is that it's exactly aligned with what you've described all along with Shopify. So this is an app that allows small merchants and individuals to start their business online without having to invest anything. And that gives them the ability to share their catalog so that they can start selling online. So this, nothing more than that, except that Flipkart is the largest e-commerce platform in India and already has 25 million e-merchants, and they are following exactly the same model that you've described all along so far.
Yeah, but then Walmart came in, and did they do a major investment, or they acquired it, right?
I don't know. That's a long time ago. Walmart has already acquired Flipkart, but that's not recent. That's not today.
I know, but that becomes important because now it's no longer a domestic Indian thing. Well, it kind of is, but it's now owned by an American company, and there's now a bunch of new regulations around it, around e-commerce that are coming out as we speak. But yes, I definitely start with Flip in reverse order. Start by saying Flipkart is the massive player domestically in India, and
Sarah, can I add one thing? Can I share
go
one
ahead.
thing? Yeah. So this Shopsy model, right? This has been there
By
in
the way,
India.
nobody outside of India knows what Shopsy is. So please explain.
Yeah. So this small and medium scale enterprise, which okay, it's like a Shopify of India. Like people can go and create their shop. So one of my batchmates, my colleague, he also started this firm, Shop 101, 5 years back, and it's recently got acquired by InMobi. So this market has been evolving in India, and most of these shops projects were failed when they tried to put it on an online shop, let's say in a browser, but they really did well when they give that facility to launch a shop on WhatsApp. So the model is not going to be like a Shopify adds it, but it's going to be a really different model, an Indianized version of, let's say, and sort of WhatsApp Insta based shop. That's where the major players are, and they're gonna sell this stuff to their influencers.
What's your point, Armish? I don't understand what you were trying to say here.
So it just came out that it's just that this model, which Tyler you were explaining, is being now adopted in India now with Shopsy. So I was just trying to say that.
Yeah, Shopsy raised a huge round about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Yeah. So you have Flipkart, which is, as we heard, is the massive player. And how many? 25 million merchants, did you say? Something like that?
Yeah, I think Sarah said that.
Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, apologies. No, they're targeting to get to 25 million in next year. So let me find you the correct number.
That's okay. And then, but it's massive. That's a huge number of merchants,
yeah, absolutely.
By the way. Yeah. And they're kind of the smaller type, not the traditional Amazon type, right?
No, they have both. They also have large, but I think the reason why they're launching this app is for the very reason that they can reach now the smaller merchants, in tier 2-3 cities that they could not access before.
Precisely, because, and by the way, please note what happened here. And this, China again is the predecessor on this, where you had Alibaba, which was very similar to Amazon in that it only addressed kind of the professional enterprise market. You had to be of some significance to be on Alibaba, just like you need to be on Amazon. It's not trivial to get on Amazon as a seller, and it's not trivial to get on Alibaba as a merchant. And then in the case of China, somebody by the name of Pinduoduo came in and said, Alibaba is only for the big kids, and what about everybody else? There's 100 million small businesses that would love to get into this e-commerce game, so we're going to make the app for them, and they did. And it turns out, what do you know, Joe? You can actually grow much faster if you provide the app for the 100 million small businesses rather than the 1 million big businesses. So Pinduoduo has now passed Alibaba remarkably, and now it's a similar sort of thing happening in the US with Shopify versus Amazon. Amazon took all the big businesses. Shopify is going to get all the 100 times more small businesses, but in aggregate, they actually end up being bigger. To do that, they partner with the social media networks, et cetera, et cetera. And you're seeing this, what in India is doing is quite smart, which is the apps are realizing we should just do both. we already see what's going to happen is if we focus on the big businesses, somebody else is going to come and take the small businesses. Let's just enable both. We'll take them both. Thank you very much. I think that is what Flipkart's smart realization is rather than, yeah. So that's smart.
Yeah, exactly that.
Tyler,
And I think one more thing is that Flipkart and the Amazon has become pretty huge, so that the small and new entrepreneurs won't get a chance in that huge marketplace. So if you need to have your marketplace or your products in Flipkart and Amazon, you probably need to spend a lot of money in ads, which they can't. So I think this may be a first stepping stone for the small entrepreneurs to come and move to this small area, WhatsApp-like marketplace. And if they grow big over there, then they can move to Flipkart's bigger marketplace. I think that's their idea.
And there's another point. There's another point. Flipkart also owns PhonePe, which is a digital payment provider, and they are equipping now. They're pushing very strongly to enable digital payments for those 25 million small merchants that we're talking about, to ensure that not only do they get online, but they get all the facilities to ensure that the digital payment system can go through.
So, Sarah, just wanted to say this 25 million, they are businesses they want to create by 2023. They do not exist as of now because this platform
You're
is
right.
really
You're right.
different. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
you're right. That's
it's
the
basically,
target. But what we can say to give the audience an idea is that jointly Flipkart and Amazon owns 90% of the e-commerce volume and value. So you're right. It's
right.
not 25 million today, but this is their ambition for next year.
And these are just a reseller of the goods. So you and I can also register in that platform, and sitting at home, I can sell the stuff which Flipkart sells to my friends and family. So that's they are calling as entrepreneur, but it's more like a marketing spend, so that your product gets sold by individuals into their local network of friends, and they get a cut because the cost they spend on marketing just offset this model. Even if you so that's a play which actually is original play which evolved in India. It's not a Shopify play, and now Flipkart is launching, taking that learning from those local startups and launching here in form of Shopsy. But it's not Shopify at all. So that's what I'm going to say.
Okay, so here's a really interesting new headline. Yeah, somebody?
yeah, I actually just wanted to, on that note itself, Central Bank of India actually came out with a report just yesterday, wherein they're actually saying that because the big tech companies are trying to push into financial services as well, they are planning to change their regulations or come up with more stricter regulations, and that they have a sort of a concern for all these big tech entering financial services.
Yeah, as they should, because I think they smell what these these big tech companies are really after, which is that sweet, sweet data, and how they're going to use that in ways that the traditional players never thought to. So here's a crazy headline developing at the moment. Where did it go? Where did it go? Here it is. Let me read it from the source here. Here it is. This is wild. Former Trump spokesman Jason Miller from Santa Monica, California, the kind of tall, thin, balding dude who made lots of crazy comments, I believe was seen in anyway, really interesting figure in the Trump team and Trump's spokesperson. It was reported a couple of weeks ago that he was stepping down. You guys remember this headline? He's stepping down from Trump's team to focus on building the social media app that was ostensibly going to be somehow connected to Trump's new return into social media. Yeah, everyone remember this headline from a couple of weeks ago? So now we have more details. According to Politico, former Trump spokesperson Jason Miller leads GETTR, GETTR, a Twitter-like service that bills itself as a non-biased social network in the newest pro-MAGA tech venture. It was a new social media platform launched yesterday, billing it as an alternative to the big tech sites. And the headline from the Daily Beast says that this new Trump app is bankrolled by the fugitive Chinese billionaire and best buddy of Steve Bannon, who is this Chinese billionaire who fled China and who's apparently wanted by the CCP. And he and Steve Bannon are best buddies. Trump advisor Jason Miller launched new social media company being bankrolled by a buddy of pardoned Trump strategist Steve Bannon. And on Thursday, Miller announced the launch of GETTR. And as announced after Politico reported on the existence of the new site, what's not made clear to GETTR's users, though, is that the site received initial funding from a foundation owned by Chinese billionaire Guo Wengui and his family. In an interview with the Daily Beast on Thursday, Miller and Guo's family foundation provided GETTR with early funding. Some of the initial seed money has come from his family foundation, Miller said of Guo, who also goes by the name Miles Kwok. Guo isn't a direct investor in GETTR, according to Miller, and doesn't have a seat on the board or other formal roles. Okay, but what about this app? So GETTR is the Trump team's buggy, leaky Twitter clone, is another headline. Trump's former spokesperson, Jason Miller, launched the new social media platform, and researchers are already finding it's a flurry of bugs in it. Well, that's very common, actually, of brand new social media apps. On Thursday, Politico revealed that Donald Trump's former spokesperson had quietly launched a new social platform called GETTR, and they had a security and privacy researcher and former FTC chief technologist already found a couple of potentially bad privacy bugs. That's kind of par for the course, honestly, although that tech journalist probably doesn't know that. But anyway, the Trump team launches the app. This is being perhaps quickly becoming the most reported story in the tech sphere at the moment, is this new GETTR app by Jason Miller, the former Trump spokesperson. And one other there's a bunch of interesting details all being announced on all kind of different outlets. And one of them is from Jennifer Jacobs, who is the senior White House reporter for Bloomberg News, and still currently. And she says that she has some news that Trump isn't joining the new social media platform, GETTR, and won't have any financial stake or participation, according to Jennifer Jacobs. Apparently, the ex-president still has plans for a separate platform, unclear what exactly. And then it gets even far more complicated. There's all kinds of crazy reports about the most popular user in the app currently is a fake account and all kinds of crazy things with this app. But that's one of the big news headlines that are still developing and probably will be for the next day or so. Here's similarly, one of the biggest stories in tech at the moment is that days before Jeff Bezos steps aside, 2 points to its 14 corporate values requiring staff to consider welfare of coworkers and safety at large. Workers now required to consider employee welfare and society. And let's just read this Bloomberg article, shall we? Workers now required to consider employee welfare and safety, and employees are hired evaluated on how they conform to this list of this new leadership principles. Amazon employees are expected to operate based on long-standing code of 14 corporate values. On Thursday, yesterday, just days before Jeff Bezos is set to exit as the chief executive officer, the company has now altered the list by adding 2 more bullet points. The new leadership principles, which are strive to be the Earth's best employer, which is ostensibly about being more green, and success and scaling brings broad responsibility, require employees to take into account the well-being of their coworkers and society beyond companies' walls when making decisions. They also address persistent criticisms of the company as a bruising workplace and inconsiderate corporate citizen. So here's the quote. The leaders work every day to create a safer, more productive, higher performing, more diverse, and more just work environment. They lead with empathy. This is kind of the internal, call it propaganda of sorts, kind of the internal principles by which they want the team's members to kind of follow. So anyway, 2 new principles for all Amazon employees. And here we get into my favorite fun headlines, and I've got about 20 of these. and thank you to everyone who sent these in. Radeja sent in one that Spain is now added to the ever-growing list of countries that now want to crack down on big tech. The headline is Spain looks into antitrust practices by Apple and Amazon, now, which we can now add to the ever-growing list of the US, and then it went the EU, and then the UK, and then Japan, and then Germany, and one other I'm forgetting, and now Spain has joined the list of countries all within the same month who are all simultaneously cracking down on big tech. What an amazing coincidence. And then, Aaron, you sent in one about the Carrot Financial raises $26 million for corporate cards for creators. Now that we're going into this creator economy, these creators are going to need their own bank and their own cards. And Carrot has raised $26 million for corporate cards for creators, for the creator economy. You have thoughts on that, Aaron? Maybe not, but I do, because I believe that Square, owned by one Jack Dorsey, also the CEO, co-founder of Twitter, is positioning Square to be the bank for creators, because it's a fintech that is very closely aligned with Twitter, which is one of the platforms where the creator economy is going to be manifested. And so Square is kind of in a perfect position to be the bank for creators. I even tweeted that, and Jack Dorsey liked my tweet about that. So I think I might have some validation on that theory. And now Carrot is stepping in to be the corporate card for creators. No doubt Square is going to try and make itself as the bank for creators with all kinds of new features and functions and products and services designed specifically with the creator economy in mind. And that's truly interesting.
Tyler, can you highlight some of your ideas of why that needs to be a separate bank? Like you were just saying there with all the products and features and that kind of thing, specific for a creator from a financial services point of view, what are they?
Yes. They, as Square, have access to the data of Twitter. This could be interesting. You, as a creator, might be able to go to...
One technical point, Tyler. You've gone a little quieter. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Just your audio,
check
just
audio.
a little bit.
Fixed. There we go.
Sorry.
So thank you.
Okay, good.
There's a button on my mic that sometimes gets pushed, and it's a minus 20 dB button. So anyway, the creator bank is different from a traditional bank in that if you try and go to a traditional bank and be like, hey, I want a loan, and they're like, great, what kind of business are you in? Let me guess, you have a bakery, you have a shoe shop, let me see your previous bank statements so we can see how much money you're making every month. You're like, no, I'm an Instagram influencer. And the bank's gonna be like, get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. We don't give loans to Instagram influencers because that's a traditional bank. But a creator bank's gonna be like, let me see how many followers you got. Do you have Kim Kardashian following you? Because we have the analytics to calculate how valuable this actually is. And that's the fundamental difference between a creator bank and Wells Fargo, who's going to be like, you got how many followers? Yeah, get the fuck out of here with your stupid ass followers. Stop wasting our time. That's not business. That ain't real business. What the fuck are you going to do with Kim Kardashian following you? That's nonsense, boy. Get the hell out of our bank. Come back here when you got some shoes to sell. And then the creator bank's like, oh no, we got you, player. We see what you got going on. Holy shit, you got Kanye following you? Goddamn, how much of a loan do you want? Creator bank. It's a whole new paradigm now that we've got the social e-commerce phenomena happening. Twitter, more than anybody, is one of the key players enabling this. And what I'm predicting is Square became an actual bank. They got their financial paperwork in orders. They are now, as part of being an actual financial institution, aka bank, they're able to make loans. Coincidentally, 24 hours after they became an official bank, they bought Tidal. Is that a coincidence? I'm not so sure, because now that Square, as a fintech company, which is now a bank, can actually issue loans, and they buy Tidal, which is a platform, and they have a very deep political ties to Twitter, they can now look at the analytics of those companies and start to evaluate.
Tyler,
yes?
Tyler, is there a coincidence that...
Easy, Rossi. Hold on. Is your house on fire? What's going on? Call the police.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
House is not on. My house
okay, good.
is not on fire.
Okay.
Is there a coincidence with the purchase of Tidal and the fact that Jack is, notably, and the 140 NFTs, and the fact that Jay-Z is now repping a punk as a Twitter avatar? I mean, come on. Come on, put it together, right? I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, it's not a coincidence at all. They're going into NFTs clearly. And in fact, they just yesterday announced they had this 100, as you just said, the 140 NFT test trial balloon featured, which I think that's what it is. And they clearly have an interest, and they spoke about it in a room that Cheryl and I were in with Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z, where they talked about the potential use of blockchain technologies, for lack of a better word, in Tidal and Square, and how this is all going to manifest itself. They were being very cagey, unclear, and I think the plan is, here's what I think the plan is that you as an artist on Tidal, which was Jay-Z's plan for Tidal, was to empower the artists, and couldn't figure out how to do that because he needed a bank to do that. And now there is a bank to do that because Square is a bank to do that. And more importantly, Square also has is a data company. They've got all the analytics ability and AIs to analyze the data, just like Spotify is a data company that is masterful at analyzing all of the numbers and traffic and visibility and exposure and plays and whatnot. And they can say to these upcoming artists, we see you are developing a social kind of following. You're becoming influential. You're developing fans. Those fans have value. We see the every time we send someone to you or every time we send one of your songs to somebody, we can now see what percentage of them become a fan and a follower of you. And that's a really keen indicator to tell us who is actually going to become successful. Because we throw out all of these songs to all of the listeners in Tidal. We see which ones actually translate into new followers. And it turns out that Pierre is going to be the hot new artist, because we see mathematically, analytically, when we send out Cheryl songs and Chris songs and Pierre songs, turns out everyone starts following Pierre. Then, hence, now, Pierre, would you be interested in a loan? Because it turns out that you get 3% of people follow you when we share their song, which is 300% more than the average. And that tells us you're going to become a potential superstar. And if that trend continues, and we've been watching you for 2 weeks and that data is consistent, so now we know we can calculate out a loan. And we're, by the way, going to start sending a lot more people to you, Pierre, because we know when we send people to you.
Dude, I mean, you are like working through the magic of this thing. I mean, I don't disagree at all, but like, bigger picture, like, what, take it to the next level right after that. I would like to hear, continue that thought.
It's easy. Well, it's simple.
Skip the rest of the
they can now as a bank, they can now give Pierre a loan, but better than that, unlike any other bank, they control the rate by which the loan gets paid back, because they are also the distribution platform that monetizes the visibility of Pierre's content. So it's a risk-free loan for Square, because they are also the platform that pays back the loan. So no bank, when you take money from a traditional bank, they aren't in control of your advertising budget. They don't own all the billboards in town, for example.
What happens, Tyler, when you take a loan out? Are there going to be restrictions potentially at some point once this becomes popular on what you can say and what you can do? If it's tied to your followers and you are pushing a certain kind of content, what happens if will you be held liable on your loan? Will there be effects to your premiums if you go off track and change lanes and start to push a different kind of content or a different kind of opinion that might potentially change your follower count? Do you see where I'm going with this?
I guess that's part of I guess that's the risk for them as the bank.
That's the new credit score. They have their own system. They'll build their own system.
It is essentially the data is
another form of that.
It's interesting, Cal, because a credit score is the traditional old school data model based on an incredibly tiny, limited number of data points.
Yeah,
right.
Now they've got way more data points.
Spotify's got 1,000 times more sophisticated credit score about you, which is constantly evolving in real time, which they can constantly manipulate themselves and play with. They can constantly take you, test your content out with all kinds of different audiences, and really build an amazingly accurate profile of the click-through rate, the listening time, down to the seconds of the average listening time of your songs, of each of your songs, of which audiences are ideal to you, all of it. I mean, when you apply AIs to all of this stuff, it gets really impressive, and it gives them the ability to generate. They know your future earnings potential, and why not give you a piece of that up front? They know they can get it back. It's risk-free to them. And now they've just cut out, most importantly, the record labels are no longer needed in this equation. No, thank you. It was nice
So
knowing
Tyler,
They
you
know
all.
your
Yes.
they know your
Tyler,
reliability.
Yeah.
They know. So one second. They know your reliability. They also know like the level of fluctuation that you have in terms of a specific track. To Carl, to your point, like if this is our track, they know the risk that you're going to go away from that track. There's so much data there.
The
It's so
point
powerful.
the point of is
I
if I
know.
was designing this, sorry, just quickly then, and then
Yeah. Go ahead.
Tyler and Kieran,
Yeah.
if I was designing this, it's really easy to get that data. I just say that to use this service, you have to connect and sign in with your Facebook or connect and sign in with your Twitter. And the moment that you do that, you have access to the beautiful, by the millisecond representation of what the content is that person's pushing out, and you can run that through NLP, and you can NPL, sorry. No, NLP, and then you can run that through all your own algorithms and everything else, and see whether that person is on track, whether they're going off track, whether they're saying something that you weren't agreed to. Where are those agreements going to be? How far down
Exactly.
the terms and conditions that young people especially don't really like reading? How far down in the terms and conditions are those provisions going to be hidden? So then you're at this point where you've made this financial agreement and you go off track, or you've made a deviation from what the financial institution has agreed for you to allow you to do, and then your premiums get affected, but not on a monthly by month basis, potentially, on a day by day basis, because that's the real time integration that you can create with this.
Yeah.
Tyler, just a quick point. So I know an artist, she's got like 1 billion views. She went to Patreon a few years ago, and she said, she needed 1.5 million because Patreon was looking to grow. And so she pitched it in a way that she needed 1.5 million so that she can start putting content, she can hire all these marketers and all of that stuff. After she got the money, she couldn't be asked to put anything on the contract. It was a 2-year contract. For the next 2 years, she just went around, traveled around.
What What contract with who? Where? When?
Patreon. So the reason I'm telling you is that what if you go to Square and Tidal and you take the money and you can't be asked to produce any content? How do you hold them accountable?
I'm sorry, that's a weird phrase. You can't be asked. What do you mean?
I mean, there are artists that they're not. If they choose not to participate at the highest level, until they got the funding, they can choose to do so, right? They can't. Tidal and Square can't sue them for saying why your content is a mediocre. You're taking 10 million. But what you're producing is subpar. But you can't sue them on the quality of the content after you let go of the funds.
Right.
So
you
Patreon,
can.
For example.
No. The contract says it has to be of artistic value. This problem's been solved 50 years ago in the music business.
But like Patreon, for example, a couple of years ago, they were under pressure to grow the. So what they've done is they went to all.
I see. You want to make the point that Patreon doesn't know the music business history. That's fine. That's their problem.
Yeah, but how would Tidal and Square would be able to?
Because they know the music business. Jay-Z's one of the biggest people in the music business. Music business contracts, when you as an artist sign it, the contract says you have to make content that is of material artistic value.
But where's the bench? I mean, anyway, so I just think there's a gray area that I think a lot of artists, they get away with it. I've seen a couple of artists, they used to be at Interscope. They went to Patreon to a couple of millions, and they just literally couldn't be asked to keep it to the quality of the level that you're talking about. I think there is a gray area that they can get away with.
Well, yes, because Patreon isn't familiar with the hysterically funny historical cases before where the music industry got snow jobbed in a similar way, and they said, okay, artists are going to try that once in a while. Okay, we're never going to do that again. Here's a new clause that is going to become standard in every contract going forward. And Patreon, clearly, they don't have people working at their team, or their lawyers didn't used to work in the music business. But I assure you, Tidal's lawyers have, so that's not going to be a problem at Tidal.
And Tyler, if I may, just taking this a step further then, because this is just risk profiling, right? This is just, giving out credit and collateral against the content that's being created.
Right.
Another angle on this is beyond credit and loans. What if there were investments made in these artists and their contents? And what if you could fractionalize the investments from the retail perspective so that Joe Soap could get involved in these up-and-coming artists?
Now you're talking. Look, see, this Aaron guy, everybody, is a freaking brilliant, because you're exactly right. Now, not only can Tidal participate in helping finance the future artistic creation process of, recording and touring, the fans potentially could as well in this platform. You can make it a mix of Tidal's done the analysis. It's almost like a little IPO and you could do it potentially ostensibly through NFTs or whatever the structure needs to be. But it's like, we as Tidal have realized this artist is of value and we think they should raise this much money. We'll put in half of it. The fans can participate as well. And then it gets really crazy.
Well, it
Essentially,
brings
what
us
they
back
will
to our
do is
Take that
okay.
into social commerce, though. Now financing the social commerce aspect, and that's the other unique thing with
Well,
all this inflation.
it could.
Rates. The
There's
central banks are really
yes.
desperate to get other people to spread the money.
There's two other possibilities, which is the artist could say, here's what I plan to produce, an album of these 10 songs on this, whatever. It's like almost like a pitch. And then the fans can say, okay, we can invest in this album that hasn't been created yet as investors, and and they become almost like financiers of this album. It's more like how movies are made. And similarly, my associate producer of my events, Mikael in Stockholm, he has a startup called Venue, which does exactly this for concerts, where the artist can say, we want to do a tour, and any city that gets $10,000 together, we will come play there. And so the fans of Foo Fighters all get together and say, shit, great, let's get together. And we become the what's called the promoter in the music business of this concert. So we don't have to worry about ticket sales. We're going to pre-sell the tickets ourselves as the fans, and we all got together. We've already pre-sold 30,000 tickets at X number a piece, and here's the money. Foo Fighters, if you want to take it and you want to add Poughkeepsie to your tour itinerary, because we've met your minimum threshold to become a stop on the tour.
exactly. And Tyler, if you bring this right back then to if you bring this right back to the and not going too far into the future, because all of this works today, right? As you said, the music industry, Foo Fighters.
That's my friend's startup, yeah.
Right. So this works today, but if you want to take it one step further, just into the space that we all talk about regarding NFTs and tokenization, one of the key things here with Square and Tidal and where Jack's going with crypto and not cryptography rather than cryptocurrency, but where he's going with this and being able to give an NFT, so a token, where the artist owns, the content, but effectively then can get royalties from where this content is distributed, and people can procure these NFTs. And so that way it always gets tied back via smart contracts to the original content creator.
Yeah. I have to do a quick call out that our friend Florian just opened his room called Digital Inclusion News Around the World. So if you're interested in the digital inclusion conversation, that's now open with Florian and Amay and Lakeisha and Farai is over there. But brilliant point. It gets really interesting really quickly. I really hope Jack and Jay-Z do that. That would be really wild to add in the kind of, to oversimplify, the crowdfundingness matched with but back to Rossi's point, what's the big to do about this? It's the big to do is the record labels are fucked and forever gone, dead, goodbye. It was nice. It was fun.
Tyler,
Go ahead, Gareth.
Tyler, can I jump in? Yeah. Remember the Sony Music thing where they wrote off the unrecouped balances a couple of weeks ago? The real lead in that story that they totally buried, which I think highlights your point about why essentially they're just busy drilling holes in the bottom of the boat as it sinks, is they've built the data flows that we're talking about getting, they've got access to for their artists. They already have through the deals they have with streaming partners and others, and all of them have been racing to build data dashboards and various other things. The piece Sony buried was the fact that they're able to give loans to artists in a more fractional sense from the data that they've got, which was a much better story than the story about unrecouped balances, which they completely buried. So I think some of what we're talking about is already happening, and then to build upon just how fast that's moving to your broader about where things are shifting around the labels, some of the stuff being talked about fractional investment and retail investors, that's happening. there are companies doing it. There's a company called Opulus that's a DeFi project for artists and artist funding. There is a company called A Note that is basically a retail investment in music catalogs. Hypnosis is a publicly listed fund that is basically full of institutional investors investing in music assets and has been running for a number of years now. And I think the thing there is where, to your point you've made before, which is the labels business model historically has been a terrible, kind of bank-based model from an artist point of view. The inflows of finance and cash, if you're an artist right now, are huge. And there are just so many different options and everything's moving so fast that, if some of the ideas that people are talking about and saying, are they going to come? They're already here. I think what's really interesting with what Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey do is they're taking a ton of the oxygen around these things and really driving it. So I think it's just going to accelerate. But there's lots and lots and lots happening. And it's very different than the Patreon kind of crowdfunding funding model in most of these instances, because essentially at the moment you're actually talking about financial instruments and investments, where crowdfunding was kind of an e-commerce play and was a sort of different kind of model. And I'd argue it's not just music artists that then didn't bother to make good on those things. There's loads of startups and other things, those crowded models that have done the same. But I think that the space is really interesting. I'll try and tweet a few if you were tweeting the Jay-Z thing in the comments so people can see some of them. But the retail investment stuff's kind of here and it's moving really fast. So it's really, really exciting to see it happening.
Yeah.
I want to add to your point, if I may,
Yep.
just because a friend of mine also, he's also on Clubhouse, Rory Hughes. He started this kind of ETF-like startup where you can invest, a monthly portion of whatever money that you want, and it will distribute based on performance, but it's based on your preferences of who you listen to on Spotify. It will distribute this money that you want to contribute to those artists and directly to them if they're signed up to the platform. So it's kind of like an ETF based investing on top of your whatever Spotify subscription. So just to your point that there's a lot of that happening in the industry, really based on data, right? And just very interesting development.
Yeah, we've got a whole shit ton of headlines that we didn't have time to cover but I'm tweeting them out now. So go follow the Tech News Twitter account because I'm sharing all the best of the best tech headlines going on that we don't have time to cover. For example, and there is the robot. My favorite story from the last session was Amazon plans to test its delivery robot tech in Finland, which they clearly stole identically from an Estonian company just next door. And I have the photo that I just tweeted out the article from Rhonda. I'm going to add the photo that you have to see how Amazon just blatantly stole this design and this product of this futuristic delivery robot. And they deserve to be called out on this. This is really egregious, kind of intellectual property theft. And I just sent that out just now. You can see that at the Tech News Twitter account. And again, let me just look real quick through these articles that we don't have time to cover. Amazon revises its thing. We covered that. Outcry over South Africa's multiple husband proposal. We'll save that and jump into that in the next meeting 5 hours from now. The 2021 EdTech avalanche has just begun. We're going to cover that. That's a fantastic story. And they're right. That's what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. And then, Gareth, you had this article about analytics on the forefront for Tidal moving forward. Indeed, they said specifically that in that meeting between Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z, that they want to focus on the tools and the analytics. Not a surprise because they want to do loans. You kind of need the analytics as a precursor to doing that, as a prerequisite. And then report that China is building new intercontinental ballistic missile silos is very concerning, says the U.S. Indeed, there's satellites that get updated every day, and there's now images of these massive nuclear ballistic missile silos that China has, of several hundred nuclear missiles, which is a very interesting development indeed, and perhaps related to the incredibly strong rhetoric coming out of Xi Jinping yesterday, that they will not be bullied. And I think those two things are potentially related. And Taiwan cranks up EV battery development from Foxconn, very notably, which I'm just tweeting out. And Uber's first head of data science, a very key person indeed, just launched a new venture fund to back nascent AI startups, which you might want to participate in if you can, because Coup removed 1,900 pieces of content via proactive monitoring using automated tools to protect Modi from seeing tweets or coups that might potentially hurt his feelings. And so Coup is doing their job and proactively removing all of the potentially offensive content within India. And that's why India loves Coup. And that's why Coup will potentially pass Twitter. And that's why Twitter will probably get kicked the fuck out of India, because now they've got their own domestic one called Coup, which, as the headline says, thank you to Ranjit for sending it in, Coup removed over 1,900 pieces of content via proactive monitoring using automated tools to protect their leader from getting his feelings hurt, because they've got freedom of speech, and that's inconvenient.
Tyler, Coup is a shitty app.
Taylor, and the case against Twitter will be heard on July 5th, I think, on Monday. So it will be interesting news on Monday.
And Twitter's managing director might go to prison. Just an anecdote. Yeah, go ahead, Armis.
No, I was saying to my fellow countrymen that they can themselves log into Coup and see how much shit is there. So I don't see many people, at least in the cities, using Coup. It's mainly the propaganda machine. So yeah, so it has a future as long as this government is around. So that I would say.
It's an interesting development, but we got to pause because I need to eat, and we got to jump over to Florian's digital inclusion news around the world and do that. And then we're going to save all of the juicy headlines for when we meet again.
But I
in
think
about
we did really
5
well
hours.
with the headlines today.
It
was a deeper discussion. Hey, Rossi, 1 second.
Well, Rossi's house is on fire again. What's going on, Rossi?
Yeah, listen, Rossi. Just 1 second. There's a wait a second.
It's
Rossi,
muted. What better can I do? I'm muted. What do you want me to do?
No, just
unmute yourself.
Let Cal talk.
Yeah.
Let Cal talk, Rossi.
Rossi, there's just a culture and a tone to this place. Okay, so that's good.
Yeah,
I love you.
I'm as
He's excited
muted as I can be.
Go ahead. Feel free.
Okay,
mute and unmute yourself as you wish. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. So all I was saying, Tyler, even though we didn't go through all the headlines, and also we didn't get to the new format, which we will, like asking people in the thing, today's discussion was fire. The topics were great.
Fun.
We went deeper. Great.
I gotta shout out to Club Deck. It makes it much easier. It really does. And so
I gotta say, you're happier today, Tyler.
Oh man, yeah. I got my
Your
baby back.
Your spirit is up.
I got my baby back, my Club Deck.
And it's Friday.
Yes, happy Friday to everybody. And we will meet you again in about 5 hours for another fun Club Deck fueled version of Tech News Around the World. I can't wait. And thank you everybody for all your insights and everything. Rossi, you're most welcome back.
Honestly,
sorry.
I mean, I'm surprised you guys.
We love you, man.
We love you. Get some fire insurance for that house of yours, man. I hope it doesn't burn down.
You gotta be kidding me, bro.
Okay, see you.
What the fuck?
See you, everybody.
See you later, Rossi.
Tyler, you didn't see my PM about GETTR actually getting blocked by Outlook.com and Gmail.com. So
what
you're
is
not the GETTR. They tried to send an